Miss Liz, tea time, yeah, making a difference, one cup at a time, tea time, yeah, Miss Liz, tea time, yeah, making a difference, one cup at a time, tea time. So be sure to grab your tea, grab a seat, and tune in to Miss Liz, tea time. Making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time, yeah. Tea time, time.
Well, welcome to Tea Time. That's right, Miss Liz is back, and we were in the house this afternoon, and we did free speech. Now we're doing Menopause Matters. That's right, we have Dr. Zynul Khan in the house. I hope I said it right. If not, I'll get him to correct it when he gets in here. But before we get started, we're going to get you guys all over to Miss Liz's YouTube channel, and we're going to get you to subscribe to that little doorbell so that you're notified every time there's a live Tea Time show going. And you can go back and check 5 seasons of Tea Times, because there's over 400 interviews, 400 different, over 175 different topics, and over 70 different countries. So be sure to check that out. So tonight we're going to talk about Menopause Matters. We're going to talk about the White Rose community and Dr. Z's work and all of that incredible stuff. So if you have any questions or comments and you would like to have them seen, you can put them into the section here. If not, you can send Miss Liz a private DM and I will get those questions out if they're related to the conversation. So before we get started, we're going to get the disclaimer going. We're going to get the bio of Dr. Kwan, and then we're going to get Dr. Kwan in here. And tonight's tea, we're doing it different again. That's what Miss Liz does. We always do different in this house. We're doing a tea of AIM. So we're doing action, inspiration, and motivation. We're doing the AIM tea. So that's the flavor of the tea tonight for this house. Disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz, myself, is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment, please grant StreamYard permission to see your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that the content brought forward for any Tea Time show hosted by myself, Miss Liz, is always brought forward in good faith. However, may bring forward dialogues and opinions that are not representative of my platform. The facts and information are perceived to be accurate at the giving time of airing. All Tea Time guests and audience participants are responsible for using their good judgment and taking any action that may relate to the discussion. The content brought forward may include discussions for some where they may be emotionally at risk. It is significant to note that this show is engaging in discussion forums only to offer and inspire awareness and connection, and is not providing therapeutical advice. If you have any questions about the disclaimer or the panelist discussion, you may freely contact me, Miss Liz, through my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com. Moving forward, should you choose to voluntarily participate in tonight's show in any aspect, I myself, Miss Liz, welcomes you. And should you decide that the show is not made for you at this time, I respect those wishes and will see you at a later show at a later date and time. And again, all regular tea times are done on a Thursday, 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you see a tea time on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and now a Friday, it is a rescheduled tea time, surprise tea time, or a special tea time, or we just serve tea all day long, right? So now a little bit on my guest. Well, who is Dr. Z? Dr. Kwan is a dedicated sport and exercise medicine physician specializing in the treatment and prevention of non-communicable and lifestyle diseases, including diabetes, hypertension, and obesity. With over a decade of experience working along athletes and sports teams, he has harnessed the principle of exercise medicine to develop target programs for individuals dealing with burnout, stress, and weight management. His holistic approach combines physical activity, nutrition, and lifestyle habits to empower his clients to achieve their personal health goals. Dr. Kwan's unique life story has shaped his mission and approach. Raised in a family dominated by strong women, surrounded by his 4 sisters, mother, and 16 aunts, he learned early on to appreciate the complexity of women's health. His childhood was marked by memorable outings with his father, designed to offer respites from the synchronized chaos of menstrual cycles that pervaded their household. It wasn't until his medical training that he fully understood the reason behind these early morning escapes. Dr. Kwan's journey has come full circle today. He is a trusted expert in women's health, especially menopause management. After facing his own professional burnout, he redirected his expertise to help others avoid the same pitfalls. This experience inspired him to shift his focus from just weight loss to creating comprehensive wellness programs that address stress management and burnout recoveries. Working closely with his co-founder, Nurse Maria, he's created the White Rose Community, a safe space dedicated to supporting women through menopause and promoting healthier, more fulfilling lives. For his formative years to his work today, Dr. Khan's story is one of resilience, recovery, and a lifelong commitment to improving the health of others. He believes in the transformative power of exercise, balance, nutrition, and mindset changes, and he aims to extend his impact beyond individuals, helping families and communities thrive by supporting women at every stage of life. Let me get Dr. Z in here and let's spill an AIM tea. Tonight we're going to do an AIM. But we're going to get to know Dr. Z just a little bit before we get into the menopause stuff. Welcome, Dr. Z.
What? Thank you for having me. It's so
Goodness,
good
I lost
to
your
be
mic
here.
again. What is going on? Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I got you.
Okay, great. I'm back. Awesome. Thank you for having me, and it's great to be here.
It is a pleasure to have you. And this is a topic that we need to have on the table. Like, I'm a woman, I'm going through menopause, so I think it's just a perfect topic to have, right? So before we get started on the menopause matters, Dr. Z, I want to get to know you as an individual first. So who were you as a little guy and who are you now?
Well, let's start off with the most recent. I got a question asked to me today. What is a guy doing in a menopause development community? and I thought it was fairly interesting. It's not the first time I've been asked that. But here's where I come in. First off, as you mentioned earlier, me and Nurse Maria have been working together to build this community. I work specifically, as you said, in sports and exercise medicine with public health, and she works in women's health. So we've combined our superpowers to basically create this community to help women navigate menopause. So really, that's how all of this got started. In the past, I was helping Nurse Maria to overcome she was a little bit overweight and wanted to get on a weight loss journey. And during that journey, she's noticed that her menopausal symptoms started to decline and were easier to manage. And that led to her approaching me a year ago and saying, hey, I have this idea. I have all these women who have come into my office and they want some help going through menopause. And I liked what you did with me. Would you be willing for both of us to join up and work on this community together? And that's when we started. So that's the beginning of the White Rose community and where we are today. But my story goes much further back than that. It comes down to working in medicine for 15 plus years, overwhelming burnout, leading an unhealthy lifestyle, eating lots of highly processed foods, not taking care of myself, suffering from acid reflux and all these things, poor sleep, everything. And that eventually led to where I am today and what I do with helping people to manage burnout, take care of stress, and achieve their healthiest weight.
So Dr. Z, what is menopause?
So menopause is a transition. It can start as early as in a woman's 30s, and most women don't recognize it. And it could last well past their 50s, right up into their 60s. But generally, it occurs between the ages of 44 and 52, usually ending at around 52. Menopause is a transition where your hormones, the estrogen and progesterone levels, are declining, and you're going from the reproductive period in your life to non-reproductive. And that transition of the hormones is what causes all the symptoms with menopause. And that's a spectrum. Women can have no symptoms, and we've encountered women like that, and we've encountered women who had such severe symptoms that they could barely leave their house. We had one person tell us when the symptoms came on, she was a lawyer, and she had to cancel all her meetings for the rest of the month because she couldn't even get out of bed. She didn't even know what was going on. She started hitting up all these doctors. She started hitting up all these naturists and naturists. And she says nobody could give her the answers until she discovered that she was going through menopause. And that shifted everything. And she started trying to learn on her own what to do about it. So it's a spectrum of symptoms. And you could go from, well, there's a premenopause, perimenopause, and then menopause is when you go having 12 months with no menses or periods consecutively, and then you are postmenopause. That's when the transition is over, and now you're entering the non-reproductive years.
So I have a question for you, Dr. Z. So if a woman has an IUD or Miranda or a conception, how does that affect menopause?
It doesn't. Most times the IUDs just prevent her from getting pregnant, right? Okay. Now, it's not to say when you're going through the menopause transition, you are susceptible to being pregnant. So until your period is stopped for that 12 months, you are still capable of getting pregnant. So having the IUD inserted, all it does is prevent the pregnancy, but it doesn't affect menopause transition. Now, if you have an IUD that has hormones in it, that can have a difference on the transition itself. And that's where things like hormone replacement therapy and so on come in. If you have an IUD who has hormones in it, you're suspicious that you have the symptoms of menopause. And those you can easily find out what they are. The hot flashes, tiredness, mood swings. The spectrum is huge. If you're having any of those symptoms, it's good to go check with your healthcare professional and find out, could you be having menopausal symptoms? And should you remove that IUD and replace it with another one, or seek other forms of management, right? So there's still quite a bit to do there. So I would suggest go see your gynecologist, have a conversation with them, and if anything, and most gynecologists tell you there's no test to confirm you're in menopause. But see the decreasing in the estrogen levels, decreasing the progesterone levels is a good indicator that you're going into that menopause phase. So those are things you can do in the interim if you're suspicious you're there.
So Dr. Z, is there a test out there to tell if you are in menopause?
Really, there's no single test. It's a combination of, we do a proper history on you, find out what symptoms you're having, do the estrogen and progesterone levels, right? Look at the luteinizing hormones and look at your hormone levels as a whole. And then using those combination of the history and examination, and well, even a speculum examination where you can look at the cervix. That's like my fellow co-founder, Nurse Maria, she would do that. And she can, with her years of experience of doing pap smears and doing those kinds of examinations, she can look at a cervix and say, yes, I can confirm you are in menopause because of the changes I'm seeing, right? But again, it's a combination of all those things coming together, and then you can say with some certainty that you are in menopause. Now, there are other diseases that can mimic menopause symptoms, things like thyroid disease, things like some forms of cancer, some things like diabetes and hypertension that are not under good control can mimic some of the symptoms. So as I said, when you go in, it's really taking a thorough history, looking at the symptoms themselves, doing the blood tests, and looking at the physical signs that you will also look for. That combination then can indicate, yes, you are in menopause.
So, Dr. Z, you work with diabetes, right?
Yes.
So how does it mimic menopause, the diabetes?
Well, I mean, diabetes is such an interesting disease because the high sugar levels affect so many parts of your body. Everybody sees it affects the brain, it affects the heart, it affects everything from the liver, the pancreas, muscles, joints. A lot of the symptoms in menopause, things like the brain fog or lack of concentration, the mood swings, those can come on because of sugar levels being fluctuant, right? And that constant damage on brain cells and on the body can mimic some of the symptoms of menopause, right? So you get, in menopause, you can get a lot of thirst, for instance, right? And that's because of the hot flashes and so on, right? Diabetes can make you feel thirsty, right? And if it's under bad, poor control, right, that might mimic some of the symptoms of menopause. So I say there's a lot of, there become a lot of crossovers when it comes to the difference between menopause and non-communicable diseases.
So, Dr. Z, growing up with all these women, your mom and your aunts, 16 aunts and that, what did you learn about women?
It's easier to say what I didn't learn. I've learned I'm still confused. I have been surrounded by women most of my life. As I said, I have 4 sisters, my mom, and on my dad's side of the family, he has 13 sisters, and my mom's side, I have another 3 sisters. So that's why I came up to that large amount of women in my family. So being surrounded by them. Honestly, I can say in my years of experience, even in medicine, I still know very little. And I'm still trying to learn what is going on. What I've learned in the last year of working with Nurse Maria and working in this menopause is that it's complex. It's extremely complex. And I'm learning there's not as much information that's needed about it as there should be. And for something that's been around since women has existed, right? It's kind of baffling me that the information about menopause hasn't been as robust as I would suspect it should be. Now we see the World Health Organization and a lot of the bigger organizations are now pushing for more research, more information about menopause care, and looking at what is this transition and how is it affecting women. So what have I learned over the years? I could say as a guy, I'm still learning. I don't want to put my foot in my mouth. I know I can put it at the knees.
So, right, we're really hard, complex women to understand sometimes.
Yeah, my dad would pick me up on a Sunday morning once a month, and we would disappear. I grew up in Guyana in South America, and we would disappear into the countryside for the entire day. And for most of my youth, I didn't know what was going on. I just know that he would wake me up at 5 in the morning. We're out of the house, and then some days I would be home. And when that transition is happening with my mom and sisters, and suddenly my mom is cleaning the whole house. And I'm in trouble. And it's like, and I didn't do anything. And suddenly I'm being woken up at 6 in the morning to clean my room. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what's going on.
She was having a mood swing. She was just, something needs to get done like right now.
Yeah.
My kids have probably said that too. Mom, why do I have to clean my room right now? Like, it's just the up and downs. I want to talk about the name, the White Rose, the White Rose community. How did you get the name, and what does it stand for?
Well, that is an interesting story behind that one. We were trying to come up what would we name the community. We knew we wanted to make it a community because we wanted to be a supportive environment for women to come, share, and be supported through the transition. And not one of the things we discovered in doing our market research and in talking to different groups was women felt so isolated while going through their menopause period. They felt that they had nobody to talk to. Even in one of the sessions we did in one of the churches in Trinidad and Tobago, they were the women was one of the women who invited us to do that session. Was the daughter of one of the seniors in the church. And she was sitting there listening to her mom tell these stories. And she's like, Mom, I didn't even know you were going through this. I knew something was up, but I had no clue. I wish you had told me. So and her mom was saying, I didn't feel that I could share this journey with anybody. So I felt like I had to do this alone. And that's where the birth of the community came from. So I'm driving along one day and I'm thinking, what should I name this community? And I was thinking flowers. Oh, that would be a really nice way to put it. When you connect, we talk about the lotus flower and the opening of the lotus flower to represent menses and the growth of women and so on. And we talk about roses and so on. So I called up my friend, Nurse Maria, and I said, hey, what flower would you name this community? What flower would you put to the menopause change? And she goes, the white rose. She's like, I like the white rose because it has a transition from having this period of bleeding and menses to this purity that is menopause and a change into non-productive years.
I like that word purity, because we don't use that word in today's society, right?
Yes. And that's, it's interesting. And so I spoke with her and I go, wow, that's a really interesting way of doing it. And I was like, one of the other things I know about roses is they all come with thorns, right? And that represents that change, those symptoms you're going through, those thorns that will poke you. But once you clear them, you have this beautiful flower that has such vibrance. And I loved it because it just popped into her head and she just said to me, I was like, that's the name of our community. And we just embraced it and we led into the White Rose community. And I always say the purity of it is this. We always, in doing this, especially in modern society, we tend to push women aside when they lose those reproductive years. It's like suddenly you're not serving society because you can't make children anymore, which is not true. In the older cultures, the Indian culture, the African cultures, mothers who are menopause, grandmothers, they're revered in their society. They're a source of wisdom. There's a source of learning. They're the grandmothers who help raise your children and help you to navigate the childbearing years. And they're embraced as one of the biggest matriarchal parts of society. But in our modern society, we tend to lose that. And that's one of the things we want to build into our community. You're now transitioning to being the matriarch, the leader of your family. The one with all the wisdom who can come back and really pass it on, not only to your daughters, but to the grandchildren and to the generations to come. So that's what the menopause journey is about. It's really about learning that transition and finding your new role in that world that you're now transitioning into.
Dr. Z, how can we start a conversation with menopause, with our daughters, with our granddaughters? How can we have that clean conversation without feeling, oh, we shouldn't be talking about this? Because society has given us that, oh, hush, hush. We don't need to talk about that.
It's like a conversation that parents have with their children when they're talking about sex, about that transition. It's a very uncomfortable conversation. Your kids don't want to hear about it, and you don't really want to talk about it, but you know it's important. With this, it's a little different because here is a change where you're both all adults and you're all have experienced the world at some point in time. It's for the woman to say, hey, and this is what the community is about. And this is something we're trying to build and creating that conversation about. The problem is it's been swept under the rugs for so long that opening that gate of open communication is going to be a challenge. So I always start off by telling people, especially because I work with weight loss, I was like, you don't have to ask somebody to lose weight with you. You don't have to ask somebody to, hey, come in, bring your rest of the family on board with you. You have to join me, otherwise I won't succeed. I always start by saying with these simple words, I need your help. And one of the things about using words like that, it opens everybody else because we are giving people, as human beings, we love to help, right? One of the biggest things you can ask for, like charitable organizations, what do? They go, I need your help. And what do? You open your wallets and say, how can I help you? So do the same thing with the ones you loved. Because guess what? The ones you love are the ones who want to help you the most. So say, I need your help. I'm going through something in my life that I've never been through before and I don't understand it. And it's okay to admit I don't understand it, right? And I think it might be menopause. And then leave it at that. You don't have to ask for any more. And suddenly the people in your life will go and research it for you. Suddenly you have a whole bunch of information coming back to you saying, hey, here's some stuff I just found out about. Here's this community that works in this. Do you want me to join you? Do you want to be a part of this? Here's some videos you can watch. But always start off with, I need your help, right? Because opening up on that transition, and you don't have to go deeper than that. You can leave it right there and let's see what happens.
Dr. Z, why do women feel so isolated when they go through menopause?
I think that's society. We have created that isolation. We've created that society where it's so built on the masculine that we've lost the feminine. and women supporting women is just one of those aspects of it. One of the things that I discovered, and this is one of the reasons I am part of this community as a guy dealing with menopausal women, is that a lot of the men who are married to these women, the spouses, they're also confused. And a lot of them are saying, I don't know how to support my wife. I don't know how to support my girlfriend. I don't know how to support my partner. And they're asking questions. So we've had several men come into our community and sit down with their significant others and have these conversations, and came and asked questions, asking to learn more. And they're saying, once we understand what, we don't even have to understand it. All we need to know is what's going on. So can I give her, lower the temperature in the room some more? Should I put on a fan? Should I bring her something to drink? Should I rub her shoulders? Should I take a moment to step back and let us just be connected on an intimate level where there's only just physical connections, like knee-to-knee contact, hands to hands, just hold hands, all of that. And just back off a little bit. And we've heard a lot of the men come out and say, I just don't know what to do. Like even Maria, when she was talking about her journey, she says, after running through my course and working with me and she lost 43 pounds in 6 months, which is amazing, right? And she says, when she started that journey and she started overcoming a lot of her symptoms, and she started seeing a change in her body, she was able to talk to her husband. Her husband saw it, and he put up a punching bag in her home. And he says, look, you see all that anger, all that frustration you have at work, just let it go in the bag. And she says from there, it led to the two of them going to the gym together. And now they have a better relationship because of it. And she says they're more open. He understands what she's going through, and he loves the changes that she's gone through, and he supports her through it. And that was just a change in her seeing a different mindset and saying, okay, you know what? I need to open up. I think, to bring you back to your question, why do women feel so isolated? I think that's a society thing. And that's why we're doing the White Rose, because we want to change that narrative. We want to see a difference in women helping each other, but also being okay with saying, oh, I don't need to tell you everything because I don't understand it, but here's this group. Come and sit down and listen to the videos, and you'll get an understanding of what I'm going through.
So Dr. Z, do you and Dr. Maria, do you guys offer like retreats or workshops or stuff like that for husband and wives?
Yes, we are. Those are some of the things we want to build into our community. We've learned that intimacy is a huge issue when it comes to menopause. A lot of women feel that they're neglecting their partners during the change. A lot of partners don't know what's going on. So they're like, oh, I don't know. So one of the things we're going to do is intimacy. In fact, next year we're winding down for Christmas a little bit, because Christmas in the Caribbean is an exciting time. Lots of gifts and presents, but also lots of parties and time offs. So we're winding down for Christmas, but the beginning of January, we're going to do a lot of challenges, like 5-day challenges, like building intimacy into your relationship, creating connection, creating better communication. Those are the things, some of the things we're going to run throughout the year. As we grow as a community, we're going to start holding the local retreats right here in Trinidad and Tobago, bring you to the Caribbean so you can enjoy the Caribbean while rekindling your relationship with your partner, and then enjoying some sun and fun and overcoming menopause symptoms. We want to build in some courses. We have one course we run regularly every year. We're starting the next run will be in January, which is a 7-week course on how to achieve your healthiest weight and get weight loss. It's called Ultimate Weight Loss Recipe. So that's one of the courses we're going to run. I'm working with Maria, and we're going to work out on building more courses as we progress and as our community tells us what they need, and we can then serve them in the best way possible. Another thing we look at is supplements. What supplements are the best supplements to take to manage a lot of symptoms? And we've done a lot of research on this, and what we discovered is most women need probably about 10 to 15 to 20 supplements. But many of these supplements are in your daily food, and you can get it in just your nutrition, with you only adding in 3 to 4 other supplements that you need a little extra, things like magnesium, right? But a majority of them you can get in daily intake. It's just how to get it into your diet in a way that it serves you well. Like, for instance, clearing brain fog. You need more healthy fats in your diet, like the omega fatty acids. How do you do that? You don't necessarily need to take a tablet all the time. Just eat more healthy fats. And in the 7-week course, that's what I show you is how to implement these different dietary guidelines into your daily routine, so you're getting it every day without having to go out and buy expensive pills to replace what is already easily available in food.
Well, I think it's important that we all look at our diets, right, as we age as well, because certain things that we ate when we were younger, we cannot eat when we're older because of our metabolism and, you know, our bones and nerves and all of that because of life.
Yes. And as you age, you know, your metabolism slows down. It does it naturally. Women going through menopause now have this loss of these hormones, which increases the risk of things like diabetes, hypertension, heart disease. It increases bone loss, which does where you get the osteoporosis, the broken bones. So, and then you got to work in your flexibility. I always say toilets and chairs are awesome inventions until it comes to the hips, right? You should be squatting to the ground at least 10 to 20 times a day, right? And I always compare the Eastern toilet or Western toilets, and they spend a lot of time squatting to the ground to use the Eastern toilet. That's actually very good for your hip. Why? Because the hip has to rotate. And if you're sitting, it doesn't rotate completely. And that increases the risk of fractures. So when they looked at some like Japanese women, they found that they were squatting 30 times a day because they sat on the floor, right? And they sleep on the floor. So they were going up and down 30 times a day, have stronger hips. And they're seeing that there's increased hip fractures because of the advent of chairs in the Japanese culture. So they're pushing back against that. Everybody stay on the floor, right? So flexibility is important. Another challenge we're going to put in next year, doing a flexibility challenge. How do you increase hip flexibility? As you go into the estrogen, you lost the estrogen, the muscles and the ligaments in the pelvis weaken, right? And that causes the uterus to come downwards, and it can protrude out of the vagina. That's a problem. That can be avoided by doing good flexibility work in the hips. I'm sure everybody here has heard of Kegels.
Yes.
Very good exercise to do. How do you implement Kegels on a daily basis? Why can't you do 5 minutes of flexibility work every day and then carry on with your day? So all of those things are truly important, and it decreases your risk of hip fractures, decreases your risk of the uterus coming down. It improves intimacy and sexual health. So when you have
Dr. Z, for anybody that doesn't know what ketos are, could you tell them what they are?
So Kegels is basically an exercise that helps with the musculature and the ligaments in the hips, in the pelvis itself. It's on the inside, there's muscles and ligaments. So it helps to strengthen those things and pulls the pelvis together. So the pelvis is basically a structure that's slightly pulled apart. When you get pregnant and you go through the pregnancy, it opens up. Those ligaments stretch out and they become wider, and that's how the baby is able to pass through there. But after pregnancy, they come back together. Now, it doesn't come all the way back together because it can't get back to the 100%. That's why women see the widening of the hips that happens after pregnancy. But when those hormones in menopause start to decline, the estrogen and the progesterone, it also causes those ligaments to get weaker. So we got to maintain that strength. How do you maintain that strength? The muscles. So Kegels helps to strengthen the muscles and pulls it all back together. Right? And there's an interesting one. Now, this is about a guy. There is a sumo wrestler that is called a wolf in Japanese culture. He had this issue where his shoulder would dislocate. He could be sitting and it just falls out of place. The ligaments were so gone and it was all torn. And they said the only way he can fix it is to do surgery, but he had to stop sumo wrestling. Now, if you see pictures of him, he has these massive deltoid muscles, these massive shoulders. What did he do? For the rest of his career, he worked in developing the musculature in his shoulders and never had dislocations ever again. Became one of the top sumo wrestlers in Japanese culture, right? Called a wolf. He was smaller than most of his wrestlers and was able to push them out, and his shoulders never popped out. Why? The muscles around his shoulders were so well developed that it held it in place. That's exactly what's happening with the hips. Those muscles, when you strengthen them, it pulls the hip together, improves pelvic strength, improves pelvic health, and leads to a better pelvic area.
Dr. Z, we have a question here. Do ketos help the sex drive?
Yes. No. This is an interesting one, right? Because, one second, I'm being disturbed by a little person. Sorry about that. So here's an interesting one. Some women go through, when they go through menopause, their sex drive goes down, right? And the libido declines. But some women, it actually goes up. And that makes it, and they actually become hypersexual, where they want more of it, right? Now, pelvic exercises help to improve that pelvic region, decreasing the painfulness of like things like sex, and that looseness like that happened there, it all tightens it all up. In addition to that, you have to use lubrication because, of course, it gets dry, it can become painful. So all of those things play into it. Kegels, because you're exercising, naturally increases your endorphins, which are good for sexual drive. It increases your happy hormones, which makes you more sexually active, right? And that's why it's not a single effect, but a stacking of effects. And that leads to why, if you're doing exercises, you're eating healthier. Your food can also affect your sex drive. So if you're eating healthier, you're doing exercises, you realize that you're actually, by putting all these stacks together, you have a good mental health, you have a positive attitude, and you're implementing intimacy practice in your relationship. You realize it all goes up. And it all stacks together, and suddenly you have this very intimate relationship. And everybody thinks intimacy is just about sex. No, it's about connection. And once you start getting that connection, that's when the real sweet sauce happens.
I like that, the sweet sauce, right? And I have had intimacy on Tea Time many times because I want people to understand that it's not just the intercourse with a relationship, right? It's the connection. There's different stages of connecting one another. It doesn't always have to be intercourse. We have a question here. What foods affect sex drive?
Highly processed foods.
Oh, really?
That's the biggest one. Yeah, it's all chemicals. It's gonna disrupt everything. Here's the thing. A lot of times, most of the chemicals they use in highly processed foods are called what they call fat-philic. They love fat, right? So where do they get stored? In fat cells. So when you eat a lot of highly processed foods, it's getting stored right in your own fat cells. So when you're thinking that it's going to pass through my system, it's going to go away. No, it's right there. So when you start losing that fat, you can be releasing those chemicals for a very long time. So it's been sitting there for a while. All that is going to cause your libido to go down. It's going to cause you to feel bloated. It's going to cause you to feel uncomfortable. All of that just contributes to decrease in your sex drive, in your libido as a whole. So highly processed food is like the biggest culprit in all of that. It also affects your hormones in your body. And once you start affecting those hormones, you realize that everything goes down. The minute you start exercising, just 10 minutes each day, and it's building that up to 30 minutes over the period of weeks, you realize everything starts to change. You see the cycle start happening where you feel more energized. You feel less brain fog. You feel more focused. You realize that your body starts to change. It feels more comfortable. Your breathing decreases. Your heart rate decreases. All of that contributes to, so I know the question is, what foods can affect your sex drive? The biggest one, the biggest culprit in this is highly processed foods. And what a lot of people don't recognize is that even though you might not go eating a bunch of fast foods, you're still bringing a lot of highly processed foods into your house, and identifying them becomes difficult. And this is what I do. Like, one of the ones I teach in my course is the genetically modified oils, or GMO oils. General manufactured oils, I also call them, right? There's canola, sunflower, and I'm not trying to knock out any brands here, but those oils are highly processed. they've been run through so many systems that they have to put the nutrients back in it, right? And that's right here. And if you're frying food in that, you're adding highly processed foods to your meals, right? So I always say go for the healthier oils, olive oils, coconut oil, the cold pressed nut oils, right? You know, they're available. They might be a little more expensive, but you use less of them because they're so full of flavor. And you realize that you also start to see a change in how you feel. You don't feel as bloated. You don't feel as sluggish as you would when you eat those meals. Like for instance, and I'm not super healthy. I try to maintain a healthy lifestyle 80% of the time, and 20% of the time I tell people I can eat whatever I want, right? And in the Caribbean, we have roti, and we love having roti. So I can eat roti 5 days a week if I want and still not put on weight. Why? Because I'm fairly okay 80% of the time. I was out and I decided to grab some plantain chips where they have them all over the Caribbean. We have those nice fried plantain. You can buy them on the streets, and I grabbed one from one of the vendors. They usually fry those plantain chips in canola or one of these GMO oils. I realized after eating it, I felt so bloated that when I went to play badminton later that evening, and I play high intensity badminton, that I felt my body actually slow down. And for that entire evening, I was just like, why am I feeling so weird? I'm not moving any faster. I feel like I'm dragging my feet. And then I thought back and I was like, oh, I had plantain chips earlier. And I realized just that oil in it made me not able to eat, it affected my system because I hadn't had it in such a long time. And I realized I can't do that. So I actually have to make my own plantain chips now using olive oil than buying these other ones on the road, because just the oil, and the plantain chips are very healthy. The oil they use is not. And that, even those simple things. And when you change your body, when you go through that healthy lifestyle change, you realize, you start to recognize that some things just are not serving you, and then you start avoiding them. So you go from rebelling to eating healthy to rebelling to eating unhealthy. And that's the change. That's when you hit you see all these guys who are doing these Ironman races and so on. That's how they got there. Simple, simple, simple steps.
Well, it's the steps, right? We all have to take steps in life in order to change, in order to get healthy. And what will work for one person won't work for the next person.
Agreed.
I want to talk to you about burnouts, because that's something that you do as well, Dr. Z, is burnouts. Mm-hmm. And we don't talk about burnouts in today's society. Eh? Everybody's burning out, but we don't talk about it. Why is that?
Yeah, and a statistic on that. Between 2021 to 2023, burnout went from 67% in the average employee in the US to almost 87% in 2 years. Not because of the pandemic, interestingly. It just went through the roof. And burnout is skyrocketing in all industries today. In my industry, in medicine, we are considered the highest level of burnout of any industry in the world. I'm not trying to humble brag here or boast about this. That's a terrible thing.
Yeah, you don't want to be bragging about burnout.
Yeah. So that's one of the reasons I actually took a year off from work because of burnout. After the pandemic was over in Trinidad in 2021, I read an article in New England Journal of Medicine that said that 70% of, a large percentage of doctors and nurses are burnt out, right? But what I read in the article, they said 1 to 2% of the doctors who are burnt out have attempted or succeeded in committing suicide, which honestly wasn't alarming because we know it happens in my profession. I've had colleagues who have attempted suicide in my profession. It's a tough profession. So we know that's normal. And me, I've never had a suicidal thought in my life. So I'm reading the article and I continue reading. And this is the scary part. When they got into it, they went and they interviewed the doctors who survived their suicidal attempts. And they asked them, have you ever had a suicidal thought in your life? And 70% of those doctors said, I have never in my life had a thought about suicide. That scared me. So let me put this in perspective for you. That doctor left work jumped in their car, jumped in a train, jumped in any form of public transport, went home, and killed themselves. Like that.
So it was just like a switch.
Yes. They went from their shift at work to go home and took their own lives, or attempted to take their own lives. Just like that, that switch was switched on. And that floored me. I got so scared because at the time, my daughter was just a year old, right? My first daughter was now 4 years old. And I thought in my head, wouldn't one day I get up and walk out to this hospital and do something like that? Me, who's never had a suicidal thought in my life. And I lost my best friend to suicide. And that scared me so badly that I got up. I went into my boss's office. I went to HR first and found out how much vacation I had. They told me I had 7 months. I wrote it in a paper, walked into his office, filled out the form and said, sign this now. I'm leaving tomorrow. I don't know if I'm coming back, but I need to leave. And he was gracious enough to sign me off on my full vacation. And I spent the next year trying to recover from burnout, right? And honestly, I did something really stupid afterwards. I went and I decided to start a not-for-profit, right, company. And within 6 months, my company failed, right? And that's because I never recovered from burnout. So yes, we don't talk about burnout in us. And yes, it affects us in the most, what you think is like something irrelevant. Like, are you feeling fatigued? Are you going home and all you want to do is sleep? Are you spending any time with your family? Are you avoiding your friends? Are you having acid reflux? Are you having...
Oh, I lost you. You hit your mic and I lost you. We're going to get him back. Don't worry, guys. We're going to get him back. You tapped your mic, Dr. Z, and I lost you. Nope, nothing yet. See, we're talking about burnouts, and look at, we get burnt out. And this is what happens with technology. We are live, so we will keep continue. Dr. Z is working on it, and we will get him to continue. I think it's when you tapped your mic, Dr. Z, you might have hit something. No, I don't have you. It's cutting in and out. So whatever you're doing, it's coming. And that's how life is, right? We just got to keep taking steps until we get those steps going. So for anybody that would like to know more about Dr. Z as he's fixing his mic, check out the website at the www.thewhiterose.site, and you can get all the information there. If you have any questions or comments that you would like me to send to Dr. Z, be sure to send those into Miss Liz's Facebook page and all of that good stuff. We're going to get Dr. Z back. We're not going to wrap up until we can get him back. So I'm going to keep pushing him until he gets a voice. Maybe if you sign out, sign back in, we can get you. Try that, see if that works, because that's what happened the last time before we went live. So sign out, sign back in, and then we'll get you back in here. So before Dr. Z is going to come right back, we're just going to get him back. So we are wrapping up on the 28th for November's guest. We have Kyle Kuhn coming in, and then we have Kevin Kristen coming in from the Sad Times podcast. He'll be coming in as well on the 28th at 3 and 7 p.m. And the press release for December's guest has been sent in and will be released on the 24th of November. So be sure to check that out. And again, check out Miss Liz's website at www.misslizsteatimes.com. You can see all of the tea times there, and you can check out all 5 seasons on the YouTube channel. Again, Miss Liz's Tea Times is my YouTube channel. Check that out. Ring that little bell. Get subscribed. We are wrapping up 5 seasons on December 19th with a reunion show and farewell show as well. So we want to have everybody join us for that as well. So you'll be able to see some of the guests from season 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, because that's how Miss Liz rolls. I always try to bring back as many as I can, and different topics and that. So I really want to thank all of the listeners and viewers out there that are supporting Miss Liz. We have Dr. Z back. Let's hope we got a voice. I got you and I can hear you.
Okay, awesome. We're back.
So we'll let you continue where you left off, Dr. Z.
Yes. So that was a scary moment for me. And I spent the next year just trying to recover from burnout and teaching myself how to do it. So when you say, why don't we talk about burnout enough? I think it's just that that burnout is so pervasive, is that a lot of people don't recognize that they may go through a burnout 3-4 times in a week, 3-4 times in a day. Okay, bye-bye. And it's like, for instance, I'll give you an example. I work with my staff in my hospital to help them to reduce burnout. And I had one nurse come in and she was talking about how the second day she was on the job, she was burnt out. Oh, wow. She said that she came to work the first day and everything was going great. And then her boss came in, her head nurse came in and started yelling at her for no reason. And she says, okay, cool. And then she realized when she's working her duty that evening that she was the only nurse in the ward. The other nurse had called in sick and they had nobody to replace her. So she's now managing a ward with 30 patients. And she says, by the time she came in the next night, she was sitting in her car and she was thinking to myself, I feel so completely exhausted and I don't want to go up on that ward again. That is burnout. When you're so checked out of your job, and that's one day in, and she was already burnt out. Wow. I've had nurses say they sit in their car and they're in tears before they start their shift because they just don't want to go in the ward. That's when you know you're checked out. And honestly, menopause is a form of burnout. There's a physical change, there's a psychological change, and there's emotional change. Are you feeling that you can't spend time with your family? Are you feeling depressed? Are you feeling withdrawn? Are you feeling anxiety when you're going to work? Are you feeling on a Sunday you can't go to sleep because you're not what you're expecting on Monday sounds so far off, right? All of those things contribute. And then there's the physical symptoms, which is the acid reflux, the headaches, the neck pains, the joint pains, all those things. And so to answer your question, why are we not talking about burnout enough? I think it's now becoming a very relevant topic. And a lot of companies and bosses are starting to look at this as an issue. What people don't recognize is a multi-billion-dollar loss having burnout. Most companies don't recognize their revenue change just by having burnt out employees. They're losing $150, $300 a day by having one burnt out employee. And that adds up. They call it silent quitters, where you're showing up for work, but you're not actually there. You show up, do what you need to do, you leave, right? That is an unengaged employee. That is costing companies money. And I think a lot of companies have started to recognize it. A lot of CEOs and bosses have started to recognize that this is an issue and I need to address it. Some companies like Google and FedEx and all these companies have become very good at managing it by creating situations that their employees can become more engaged.
Can you hear me?
I lost you. Yes, I think I
good old technology. It's the wormhole, right? We get into good conversations, and this is what happens. Technology is like, no, Miss Liz is done.
Yes, and that's actually a form of burnout. People were saying after the pandemic, people had Zoom burnout.
Right? Because there was so much, it was overload, right? It was everything was thrown at us at once. Everybody was trying to survive, but we were surviving in the wrong ways, right? We were surviving with just load. Get all the information in, but we weren't processing anything.
Yes, and we were taking breaks. Nobody was stepping back and saying, and because you're home and you're working from home and then you're home again, it's not like you had a separation between work and home. Now it's all come together. And then you're isolated. You don't have connection with your office employees, with your fellow coworkers. Now you're with this one group of people who you love being with, but it's every day, day in, day out. You need that change. You need that connection. So yeah, that would lead to it. But It doesn't matter. Wherever in the world you are, the internet will drop on you. I've learned.
And that's the thing about live streaming, right? Is you're live, you got to work with what you got, but you don't give up. You just keep going, you know, and you take a pause. You just, where are we going with this? Like, what are we doing? The wormhole takes me all over. I don't even know where I went for 30 seconds, but I enjoyed myself. I'm still here.
Yes. And as I said, you could be in the best internet spaces in the world and it will just drop on you. And it's like, oh, okay. Nothing I could do there.
Yeah. So Dr. Z, before we wrap up, I want to get into your tea, because we got into some really good conversations. We got into the menopause, we got into the nutrition, we got into the burnouts, but let's get into the tea that you gave me, which is it's action, inspiration, and motivation. Why'd you give me the AIM for the tea?
Okay. So I consider myself to be a master procrastinator. Oh. Right? I
never got that from you at all. You surprised me.
I will wait until the very last minute to do anything. And I've done that throughout my medical career, throughout my my first degrees. It's not until my second master's degree that I actually changed that. And this is how I did it. It was AIM. I was reading Tim Ferriss's book, Tools of Titans. And there's one author there he was talking to that he interviewed that had produced some 200 plus bestsellers, New York Times bestsellers. And when they asked the author, how did you produce 200 bestsellers? He said, 200 crappy words at a time. Right? And honestly, when I read it, I had to read the book at least 4 times before I got that reference. What he meant was, when he started to produce the work, he's had to take action. And for the first 200 words, it was just absolute nonsense. It had made no sense. It was the worst writing ever. And he saw it as that. And he says, what I did was I had to start writing those 200 words. I started AIM. I took action. And by writing those 200 words, it led to inspiration. And once I got that inspiration came usually after those 200 words. And it led to then motivation to finish a book. He says, once I got that inspiration, the writing just flowed. And that led to motivation. So that's what I do today. How do I get over procrastination? I don't fight it anymore. I don't go, oh, I have to do this. I don't set all these things. What I do is I set a timer that first gets my brain into the activity of you're doing work. So I set the first stack is set a timer, start the timer. And I just take action. Don't matter what I'm doing. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, for instance, like when we're doing the YouTube channel, we have to do what is the presentation for that day. I use AI a lot too. So I would go on ChatGPT and type in, give me 10 ideas for about menopause that we can talk to women about. And I see those 10 things on. That's the action. That's the first action. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have the inspiration. So I take the action. I go, okay, let me type it into the AI and see what comes up. Here's the thing. I've seen ChatGPT come up with things I didn't even think of. And it was brilliant. And I was like, okay, I can use that. Now I can put my knowledge and my expertise onto that and create something spectacular. That action led to the inspiration. Yes, the inspiration might have come from ChatGPT, but it was always there. It was in my subconscious. It hadn't come to the forefront. All that did was bring it out. And that led to the inspiration. Suddenly, 20, 30 minutes later, I am writing a nice presentation. I am producing something else that I can help, that I can use to build a community, to build a White Rose community. I did this during my second master's degree. And at the beginning of the master's, this is when I was doing my public health degree. At the beginning, I was struggling. I was barely scraping above 50%, which was okay for me. I'm like, okay, I'm okay with that. I don't have to be spectacular. When I started using this, it led to me going from a 50% average to above 70%. I was actually tapping closer to 80%, right? And in the English system that we use in education, 80% is an A, right? When you start getting into 90%, that's distinction level. But I started doing my best writing. And here's the thing, I didn't fight it. So I would have a paper due on a Sunday, midnight. But what I would do is on Monday, I would sit down in front of my computer and just look at what the instructions were. Then I would get up and leave. I wouldn't do anything else. Then Tuesday, I would come and sit and look at the instruction. It says, write a research paper on this topic. And I would go on Google and type in something about a topic. I'd take the whole thing, cut and paste it in Google and say, find me stuff on this. And whatever comes up, I would read through a couple of papers, and then I would get bored and get up and leave again. And I would do that every day during the week for just 15, 20 minutes. And the time started getting longer and longer. By the time Friday and Saturday came around, and Friday evening I would take the night off, but Saturday morning I would sit down in front of my computer, and then the juices would start to flow. But the action started at the beginning of the week. The inspiration was building. Now I sit down in front of the computer, and it starts to flow. I realized by the time I sat down on Saturday or Sunday to write that paper, 3 hours, 4 hours later, I had written the entire paper. And that led from struggling to write papers and getting 50% to writing my best work in 4 hours. And then my wife was the one who proofread all my papers for me. And she's like, wow, your writing has improved. It's actually becoming very, very involved. And all of that came from action, inspiration, motivation. And that's why I use AIM now. If you want to get rid of procrastination, don't fight it. If you want to lose weight, don't fight it. If you want to eat healthy, don't fight it. Take action. I tell people, exercise is a prescription. You need to exercise 30 minutes a day. But you don't need to exercise 30 minutes all at once. You can break it up. It's a little secret I tell everybody. It's a well-known secret, actually. You can break up 30 minutes into 1 minute 30 times a day or 10 minutes 3 times a day. It is still 30 minutes. You can do 5 minutes 6 times a day, still 30 minutes. Once you make 30 minutes and start with 2 days a week, aim, exercise. How do you get into the action of exercise? Take your shoes, put it by the door. When you come home from work, put on your trainers. Go for a walk. Do a 10-minute brisk walk. Increase your heart rate. That's it. If you can walk with your heart rate going up, but you can still talk to somebody, you're doing moderate exercise. You've just exercised for 10 minutes. You don't need to do any more. Once a day, decide to eat a salad, a fruit salad or a vegetable salad. I don't like vegetable salads. I love fruit salads. Eat a fruit salad. You don't like lettuce? Don't eat lettuce. I don't like lettuce. I eat cabbage. I love cabbage. Why are you fighting it? Why are you eating things that other people are eating, but you don't like those things? Eat something else. As simple as that, but take those simple actions. So if you want to become better at stopping procrastination, just take action. Sit down in front of your computer, go on an AI and type in your idea. And let's see what it produces.
Ask for some help once in a while.
Yeah, and it made the world so much easier, right? Everybody's thinking, oh my God, it's going to take over the world. No, that's not going to happen. It's never going to be as smart and as creative as humans are. It's never going to have that level of innovation that we have. It's taking information that already exists and just putting it back in a format that you can read quickly. That's it. I treat AI as an incompetent assistant, right? I have to review its work and I have to go through, put my expertise in there, and that's how you produce good things. So AIM starts with simply taking an action. If it's too much of an action, make it smaller. Take a smaller action. You don't want to exercise for 10 minutes? Exercise for 1 minute. You don't want to eat a whole bowl of fruits? Eat 1 banana. Right? If you want to write a book, start writing the first 200 words. You don't have to have inspiration right away. That will come. And once you get that inspiration, you realize suddenly you're motivated. The juices are flowing. And the other thing is, one thing I want to add to him is remove distractions. When you're ready to do this, turn off your phone. I have this one rule. I worked as an emergency physician for 10 years of my career, right? And I can tell you, death is the only emergency, right? And I firmly believe that. Everything else can wait a few minutes. Turn off your phone for half an hour. Trust me, if people really want to find you, they will call you. You can put it on vibrate. If they're sending you messages through Facebook and WhatsApp and every other messages, it's not that important. It can wait. Emails can wait. Turn off the distractions, put away your phone, and all of a sudden, and set just a time of 25 to 45 minutes, get into that room. Once you start doing that and you start simple, you realize procrastination disappears, you're more productive. In 3 hours, you do 10 hours of work and you feel amazing. No longer is just those little dopamine hits, but that dopamine high of achievement. And that's why I use AIM. Action, inspiration, motivation. That's it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Z, for sharing all of that incredible information with us tonight. And, you know, it goes right back to the squat, right? Start the squats, like, you know, start the ketos. Just start. Stop fighting it. Just do it.
When I say one push-up, just start with one push-up.
One push-up might take me a week, but it's to get that aim started, right? The action,
right.
Inspiration.
And if you can't get on the ground and do one push-up, do it against a wall. Work your way to the ground. You don't have to stand to the ground. You can start on the wall and then slowly. That's progress. I had this problem with my hip where it hurt myself while playing sports, and I had to improve my flexibility. I did 10 seconds of that stretch every day for 2 weeks and went from being able to touch my head to my knees. I could barely get halfway there to completely lying flat on my knees. Wow. In 2 weeks, 10 seconds each day, just 10 seconds.
There you go.
That's the flexibility.
10 seconds. So Dr. Z, if anybody would like to reach out to you or your community, how could they reach out to you?
Well, we have our website, thewhiterose.site. We are on every Tuesday night live, except for this Tuesday night. We're on live on the Healthy Reset on YouTube at 7 p.m. Well, it's going to be 6 p.m. Eastern because of the daylight saving time, so 7 p.m. Atlantic time, which is our time in the Caribbean. And you can find us there. All of our links, we are on Twitter or X. We're on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. But all of it is on the website itself. So if you go to the whiterose.site, you'll find all those links there. You can go there. We try to provide as much information as we can every Tuesday night. We always look forward to new topics, to things that women are struggling with. We want to come out. We will do the research. We will put our time and effort into creating good, valuable advice that you can implement. We just don't want to give you advice with nothing involved. We want you to be able to implement it. So we always find ways to make it easy for you to implement the things that we want to share with you. But like I say, there's the whiterose.site, and go find us there, and that's it.
Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight. It was really a pleasure. And to all my listeners and viewers and the people that were sending questions, and thank you for all of that. Without all of you guys, we could not do this. We could not serve the tea. And the tea is not the beverage. The tea is teaching, education, awareness that we all can make a difference with our stories and with the purpose in our lives. Keep serving your tea, keep being true to yourself, and we'll make a difference one cup of tea at a time. Again, when Dr. Z lost a little bit of connection, Miss Liz did share who's coming up on the 28th, so be sure to check those out. We have 2 more guests in November, and then we have 13 in December, and then we have a wrap-up reunion farewell tea time with everybody from season 1 to 5. So be sure to check that all out. Again, thank you all for tuning in tonight. Keep sharing your tea, keep being true, and we will make a difference with one cup of tea at a time.
Thank you for having me.